4:40, we'll open up the sewer commissioners meeting April 15th. Elaine, aye?
Brian Donahoe, aye.
Okay, so start with meeting minutes. I'd rather wait till Bill comes to go through those. So that means your update from superintendent.
Okay, it's been so crazy lately. I'm a little unprepared for my update, other than, I'll give you a little fill-in of some of the chaos that happened over the course of the weekend. We had effluent pump fail, a VFD actually blew up and burnt out. Major catastrophe on it. So we were down to 2 effluent pumps as of Saturday morning. Come 2 o'clock Saturday afternoon, we had a second effluent pump go out, so we're running the plant on 1 effluent pump. I talked to Elaine a little bit about it. We had the electricians come in today. They found that one of our VFDs is completely shot, so we've got to open up a ticket with Schneider to have them come in and assess what's going on with that VFD. The second VFD is actually, we learned today, is running okay. But the pump that it runs, the bearings got bound up in it. So today they actually took a good pump, swapped it in for the bad pump. And by today, end of day, we have 2 functioning VFDs and 2 functioning effluent pumps. So we're good at this point. Certainly we have to take care of opening a ticket for the 3rd VFD that shot and send a pump out to get bearings. And this is all new equipment from the upgrade.
That was my next question, and you just answered, because that's not good. Warranty still, maybe?
More than likely not. 1-year warranty is typical on a lot of this stuff. We already had a pump at Marion Drive that crapped out, let's say. And that was about 1.5 years in and 997 hours on it.
Is this a gold pump or what manufacturer?
I'll say Patterson. I'm not sure if that's the manufacturer or the supplier.
Just thinking China. We'll never see the thing.
I don't know what the situation. So from what I understand, it's bearings and seals. So
it can be rebuilt? Okay.
that should be
That's
able to
good, that's
be
good.
rebuilt. As far as where they get these VFDs, we have a spare. It was given to us actually for free. But before we put that in, we've got to make sure that whatever caused it isn't going to blow out our spare. So that's part of the process, opening up a ticket and getting Square D and Snyder in to take a look at it.
CDM involved at all with this, from a spec point of view?
I don't know if we could approach them about it, but typically it's one of those things that it's spec'd out, that it's accepted by CDM. It's equal or equivalent.
No, I get that. I just wondered if there's a way they can, on their nickel, it's their design, just take a look at it and see if there's something. It just strikes me as very odd. I'm sure it does you too. It's not just one, but one I can understand. 2, there's a defect in something.
Yeah, one is a VFD. The second one actually turned out to be the pump. So as the VFD is delivering electricity to spin the motor, the bearings were bound up in the pump, and it was like putting a brake on. So then it started putting more amps to it. And once it thought it was putting 80 amps to it,
It just burned up.
that's when the pump was only spinning at 17%, didn't lift up the check arm for a flow continuity signal, and it shut everything down. So at this point, by putting one of our other pumps in its place, we can at least get that second system functioning. But we'll be running with 2 until further notice. And we did have, the guys are great. We had a plan that if that 3rd one went out, we were just going to gravity flow it over to the leaching field under the transfer station.
There you go.
So
For itself.
it's a blessing in disguise
Which
at
was-
this point.
The emergency was what it's for.
Right.
There you
It's
go.
not big enough for anything else but an emergency.
So we're also looking at some internal things that we can do maybe next year to be able to circumvent those issues by doing some changing plumbing internally and using an intermediate pump tying into our effluent system and pumping out that way. So where we've had already two VFD failures and pump failure on that effluent line, there's something going on.
Yeah.
So we had actually CDM, their electrical engineer came in today.
Yeah,
It was
okay.
very helpful
Yeah.
in determining.
That's what I meant, is to get them
Troubleshooting.
some troubleshoot, because they design it, there's little idiosyncrasies, they may know from, we did it over here, and we had the same problem, now we gotta fix it, you know?
And his
They
name
would tell you
was
that, and it's-
Rob Goss from CDM. He's been absolutely
Well, all right,
fantastic.
that's
We
good.
even reached out to him on Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. He checked in a couple times with us. He's a fantastic person to have on your team, so he's been very helpful.
the Ron Goss,
Rob,
Rob,
yeah, and he, like I say, he was in today with the electricians that did all the work on the upgrade. And one of the guys in particular, Jim, did all the wiring to these and knows about the signaling and some of the problems with communications, because they all have like their own IP address and the signals have to talk to each other, and if the stars aren't aligned, nothing's gonna work for you. So between him and Rob, they have a pretty good knowledge of what's going on there, so.
right, good.
It was helpful.
Good.
So, other than that, I've been continuing with my labor interviews. I've got to check some references tomorrow. But I think I'm getting close to making a decision, just gotta check some references. So that end is going good.
And then that way you'll be fully staffed except for the one who's out.
Yes, and the injured individual, he's, I believe, going in this week for another evaluation, so we should have an update towards the end of the week. So hopefully that goes good. And other than that, we've just been dealing with a lot of administrative stuff lately with town meeting coming up, end of the year budget, trying to get an idea on our betterments. We've had some discussions today with some of different departments, Kathleen, Keith, and getting through some details. So as much as we learn, we still don't know. So we're still digging through a lot of different issues on that and trying to look at the whole history of the betterments and documentation, collection of funds, all that sort of stuff. So that'll take some work to get through, but we've kind of come up with at least put in some heads together today to see how we get there, but.
Yeah, and what Erin is doing is gonna be a big part of all of this with the fact she's already gone through every single property. And she knows what's been paid and what hasn't been paid, so that'll be a big positive to get to the other side of all this. So she'll continue doing what she's doing, and as far as other resources, we'll wait till after town meeting. Gotta get through that first.
Yep, I agree, this, really,
And the Jeannie has the Munis call on Thursday to talk about the first file, test file for the bill file. She's got about 150 properties identified that she's gonna work with them on she's got the file format, it's pretty much filled out. She'll work with them to validate what she's put in the columns is accurate. And the fact that hopefully they'll run it through their system, just for the heck of it.
yep, I'm just, so I'm clear on this. These are the ones that were found in this analysis, 650?
No, this is our special assessments for the least.
Oh, the special, okay, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Just a test sample
Yeah,
of 150.
Yeah,
Alright.
it looks like 150 properties, and we'll move along, then she's got another meeting scheduled, I think it's May 8th. That our goal is to have every single property that's getting a special assessment to be the file format, the file completely done by May 8th, to run the complete file through Munis. So if anything's gonna kick out because of anything we've done, it'll kick out then. And when the file's turned over to the assessors, it should be as clean as we can get it after a couple of run-throughs with Munis.
Just going back to the other one, that's really good, actually. Just, Erin seems to be going on pretty well. I know I came in to see Jean, and she was on her way to see Erin. Erin was tied up with some other people, so I never got the closure of that, but she sounds like she's into almost more than halfway through.
Yes,
And there's the reason 150, that's the numbers in my head
okay,
of how many discrepancies, missing things there are.
that's not bad. About 10%.
Yeah, that's how many, that's halfway, so if you go, add that 150 to 150, it's 300 out of 2,100 or something, whatever that number
Yeah.
is.
And
Which is,
that's it, she'll give us that.
yeah, no, good, that's,
Yeah,
that's
so
good.
it's moving along. Kathleen, we will for the production file, we'll need a couple of charge codes. Which you can, whatever you decide. One for principal, one for interest. And then I've asked Jeannie if she can reach out to Ken to see if a coordination can be done with Kelly and Ryan just to run the file. Like through to not necessarily print, but to view to make sure that the special assessments show up on the bill okay.
We
Because,
would do that as for the whole thing. We wouldn't, I don't think we could parse it out and send that unless they did it in the past.
yeah,
Yeah, that might be
Yeah.
problematic. We'll have to see.
okay, yeah, so. Yeah, because if it's gonna, yeah,
I mean, because we have to make sure that everything goes over. We don't wanna, like sometimes if you go too far, you can't go back and start over.
Yep.
We go through, they test assessing and collector, they go through and probably go through test at least a dozen times to make sure it works.
That's prudent, that's good, that's.
Because
Just
it's,
think of something else I just did, where, that this is the total aside, the new Mass Marine cards,
yeah,
they don't work.
no,
the new what cards?
The Mass Marine cards, they just change it to $5, and
yeah,
they don't
Oh,
work. If you try to do them, they make up numbers for you. And a lot of people don't know this, they're actually calling a number, they're not getting, but it's the old scene on TV, because they're back pulling them out of every store since they started last week. And I'm talking about, let's see if this works.
Yeah,
No, let's just put it in.
well,
Whoops.
I can't help it, my IT background comes up, testing.
Just,
Uh,
you're doing the right thing, and there's this giant corporation.
Yeah.
With millions and millions of dollars
well,
every
'cause they
minute.
wanna make money, so they're like, oh, well, this were very, very thorough.
Can we sell lottery tickets to name the new leaching field?
Yeah, there you go, get a
Well,
sponsorship
should-
for it or something.
Name the birdhouse.
Bob had talked about the side of the new tank. It's
Oh,
right
yeah.
there coming into the transfer station.
Do some advertisements.
Only cost you $1 million. Okay, so it sounds like we're pausing, well, collectively pausing on the betterments, but Erin's still moving along, making good progress. It's making very good progress. Budget, I think the numbers are good for the budget for town meeting. My question is the article question on listing, what was the phrase? Listing the,
Was that
Mass Water Pollution Abatement Trust.
Yeah, I
Motion.
kind of went over that with Dave, like, so. That's it's an odd thing, because we're not getting any money from them. Like, they have netted out all the debt schedules, like, so. When they recalculate and give us, on the full schedule for a debt service, they take into account any loan forgiveness or interest adjustments. So what they list is what we pay, so. Like, that was taken into account before that adjustment was made, and then like kind of showing that, but it's that language is misleading, because we're not getting money from them.
My only question is, this is how it's been for, and I know, the past, but these are the breakouts that illustrate that even though the invoice may be that amount, this is still a number that is reducing our debt. Because we have a total debt number,
Right,
and then from that debt number, items are used to reduce it. Whether it's the subsidy,
well, the
Well, the
subsidy
1/3.
actually is money that gets transferred, that's an actual entry, whereas this makes it sound like it's apples, that's more like apples and oranges. That's not money that's actually being moved from anywhere, because it's put in the same kind of description.
okay, then.
You know, I transfer money from the general fund to wastewater, I transfer money from betterments over to wastewater, but I
Right.
do not transfer any money from Mass Clean Water Trust. So it kind of looks like there's money coming from them, and there isn't.
Then does our debt get reduced by the million? then?
Yeah, the debt service that's listed is the
The
net,
4 million is after this 1 million?
no, it's 2 point something million, 2.774. You look at the,
Right, the
The budget.
2.7.
yep, that's the debt service net of,
And this has been vetted by council?
it is.
Okay, because I can you just put that in writing to me? Because,
You can get it from council. You can put it in writing.
I just wanna, because it also says raise and appropriate, and that, we've never had that language before. I just need to understand it, that's all. That's just.
I'll
my
have,
makeup.
well, Jay can explain it.
Okay, that'll work. Okay.
But this is really saying is, we've been going on a process for 25 years from a different council telling us what to do.
Well, it's been Jay for at least the last
But
10.
then, that's what I'm saying, to his defense, he picked up on something that was going on, because I mean, most of that was exactly the same.
Mhm.
He picked up on that, I think he started to look back, and maybe something changed in the state law or whatever, but, I think if that has to be done, that has to be done.
And that's
Yeah,
fine.
yeah.
I just need to
Yeah.
wrap my head around it.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah.
So,
But I will defer to him because, like from my point of view, when I'm looking, motions are what I live by. That's in the whole article. I do exactly as it says. It looks like I'm trying to take money from somewhere where there is no money. So it can be a little
Anymore.
confusing.
It's no
Well,
money.
though they like, it's just netted out. They never like give it to us and then we give it back type of thing, or, you know, every year they're not giving us money to pay our debt. They just recalculate it. So, they just like readjust it.
I know a lot of that language was actually, it's insisted on by DEP, the way it was originally done. It was their council telling us, you ain't getting anything until you, this is how the
Well,
article is.
I mean,
But that's just, I'm just
if
the
they
history.
want
It's
it
how-
like
how
that-
things move, you know?
yeah, well, if DEP or someone else wants it like that, then by all means, let's have them do that, but without their
Isn't it-
input.
Isn't that question? That's a good point. I'm glad you said that. I'm in the middle of DEP stuff right now, so.
okay,
Yeah, but like that's between
that's last.
our
year's,
attorneys
So,
and them, you know, if they want to change it, but for me, I was like, when I first started looking at it, I was like, I was like, what is this for? I was like, we don't have any money from them, like, how would I transfer? Or like, it makes it look like it's a funding source, it just gets a little confusing, and if that's a legal
Yeah.
requirement because of the nature of this.
But to your point, though, it's done. I think part of it was we had the original article and there was the SRF out there, none of these transfers had happened.
Yeah,
Now, at the end of this process, that makes sense that it might change only then, but going into the process, the language of TP,
yeah, if they need it, certainly we'll put it in, I had like.
they may
it-
not, that's.
As long as I know
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah.
for.
Okay.
You know, I hate to always go be like, that's the way we've always done it, just because I want to make sure I really understand it, because at the end of the day, I'm the one who has to
and I,
like
Yeah.
find the numbers and move it around, I just want to make sure it's right.
and I understand how that comes across. That's the way we've always done it, but to that point, if it changes, we just need an explanation.
Sure.
That's all.
Well, I'm sure once legal gives his
It
feedback.
was easier to follow the bouncing balls for me anyway, the old way it was written,
Right,
but
so,
Well, the thing is that the number for Mass Clean Water Trust is just a calculation.
yeah,
On a
yeah,
spreadsheet.
no, I get it.
But I mean, like, that's not even from them, that's something that was done internally.
It's kind of on the backside.
And
Yeah,
this comes
like
into
a-
all of the betterment stuff that, we're trying to follow exactly
Yeah.
every penny.
Which is what I wanna do, but like for that number, when I looked at it, it's
That's
just,
why,
it's just a percentage formula in Carol's. little
that's why
spreadsheet.
it's, this year it might be, Jay's fine with it, just leave it the way it is. But we're used to, when we wrap our heads around the other numbers, then we can all collectively change it.
Yeah. I mean, if
But-
that number came from Mass Clean Water Trust instead of we want this, then I would be all for it. But this isn't something from them.
So this is what's coming out, and this
Sorry.
wastewater, that's coming out, what I circled. In the new version,
No, this isn't in the new version. The highlighted section is not in this year's article,
okay. Perfect, all right.
so. And again, we're really trying to account for every penny, and that's
Yeah.
just jumped out.
And understanding,
Right.
Mhm.
that's half the battle, so
Okay.
that's, as you know, I've been struggling through this stuff. And not having an accounting background, but
And to see changes right before town meeting doesn't help. Okay, so that's the budget, betterment, town meeting, 26 will just be there. Special assessments, I went through those that Jeannie's working on, we'll be working with Munis on that. And I understand that the assessors need their file no later than May 27th in a clean file.
Yeah,
They
and if
need the
earlier
spreadsheet.
would be much better, just because it takes a long time and Kelly and Ryan is getting backed up. So we can get the file over sooner, but we'll work with Jeannie on
Yeah, because that,
it if we can.
well, if everything's clean on May 8th, for the final run through of all the 2,000 parcels. Because we want to make sure it's clean when the spreadsheet's turned over.
Exactly.
Available capacity, just the fact that, we have capacity to sell. So,
And on the, kind of ties into that. Dave and I have we've been dealing with CDM and there's punch list items that are still remaining, a few things. Somehow we get a schedule with business house online and this other stuff we're doing, but that's a important to get it wrapped up so we can get the leaching field actually finalized, technically finalized. But that'll be in the next 3 or 4 weeks, after town meeting, the way it's going.
and there's nothing we have to do, at the golf course once we switch to the other field. Should we send,
so we've got,
Tonsberg a letter or?
oh. Yeah, maybe just as a notification, just,
Yeah.
this is what we're doing. But as far as the leaching field, we gotta get a couple elevations on the wells. And then, once that's done, CDM has to do a final, just layout of where they are. And then I believe that gets filed with the DEP. We'll take our samples, and once our samples come in, we'll have at least a starting point of what the groundwater looks like before we even add anything up there.
Okay.
We should actually do the samples anytime, but some of the wells aren't developed, right? It's one of them.
No, I think they were all
We
developed.
can do the samples anytime. If we get people to do it, I would do
So
them anytime to see if they're behind us.
the thing is with the DEP, they set up an electronic filing
Yep.
process that the wells aren't turned on their,
No, I get it, yeah.
on
The
their.
EDP is a pain in the neck. but-
So I would think that they've got to enter all their data for the well heights and everything else
Yeah.
that they'd want in that.
But
DEP.
I'm just saying to get the samples, so we have those. We're not rushing around, those will be a baseline, and if we put that together 3 weeks later, at least we have the data to add to it.
Yeah. I
Just
guess
to
we
get
could.
that, if you have time, it's just,
I would just have to hold on to the data till the EDP comes up.
right, that's what I'm saying, but just have that so we know.
Yeah.
The reason I'm saying is there anything funny? Those aqua pits, if that well over there is like screaming high in nitrogen, well, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanna make sure we're not,
Yeah, yeah.
they
I
all
see
have
what
to
you're
be
saying.
pristine.
That's a good point.
Like our bill file.
Yeah, I just, cut off any kind of surprises we can.
Yeah.
Because surprise might be a good one, I mean, if it's high, it's just so, something else going over there, but that, that awful pit, who knows, the water's going differently than I thought it was in the first place. It's going towards, it's going away from the industrial park, which doesn't make sense to me. It still doesn't make sense. And that's another thing we're gonna prove is what way really is it going? So, okay,
And then I didn't know if you wanted to update anybody on the water commissioners meeting.
well, we had a meeting, Dave was with me, we presented, the concern that we had, with our cash flow, our betterments, our everything. I presented and I had the benefit of talking with everybody before the meeting to give them a heads up why we were doing it. The follow-up of the meeting, I think it was a lot of good discussion. The follow-up of the meeting was that there would be another meeting set up technically between myself, Chris Faraka, and the engineer, Chris Berger. And I got an email this morning, I think Dave was copied on it, to set up a meeting on Thursday, which we're going to do. At the same time, we talked about, I made it clear that I had started discussing with DEP this concern. And I learned, and I had drafted a letter. I suggested an administrative consent order without penalty as one avenue that would help the water department go forward without a moratorium, but still protect its interests that it had raised because of their concerns. And I also suggested a letter, because that's something that DEP would send to the Water Commission and us in the town to do the same thing, like different ways of doing it. DEP has, I sent them a draft letter. They're reviewing it, but what they're doing, and I think it happened today, so it's public knowledge, is that they looked at the fact they hadn't done a sanitary survey in a while to the town Kingston Water Department. But that is an audit of the entire system. And my understanding is they're coming down either today or tomorrow to do that. And what that does is it says, okay, all the different criteria that they worry about, including the ones that have been brought up as the reason for why a moratorium is in place. They look at all these things and say, okay, this is good, this is good, this isn't so good, this isn't so good, this needs work. But at the end of the day, it will be, you don't need a moratorium, but these are our DEP's hot button issues that you need to address right now. It also recognizes, as the water department's done, they're out spending a lot of money, they're under contract to get a new well, they're in process of doing that. And I suggested again that we would work with them to try to help them expedite their process so that it's not, as was mentioned, maybe 4 or 5 years away, having this pipe hooked up and the well functioning. Maybe we can expedite that, but that's a different subject. But let's get by you don't need the moratorium. This is why. And the theme is, you have one environmental program that's very important and another environmental program that's very important that they both support, and they're conflicting each other just because of circumstances.
Yeah.
Let's get out of that conflict that we don't have to have and carefully go forward. That's the thing. And hopefully it will resonate.
Good. Sounds like it was productive.
Yeah, if I can just add a little to that too, is, part of the discussion was that, even if they were to say, okay, you can start developing and tying into the system, that all of a sudden it's not gonna come on hard. There's gonna be someone will file for a building permit, then there's a few months before the permitting
Yeah.
process goes through. By the time you start digging and creating your building and actually tapping into the water system, that alone could take over a year for things to happen, could take multiple years. So it's not like there's an immediate need that all of a sudden there's someone asking for $200,000, 200,000 gallons of water. It's gonna be trickling in, and as that starts to develop, it'll start helping our process.
Yeah.
And the whole time that well is gonna start, getting constructed. So those two items are gonna come closer together. This is gonna be a smaller gap
That's a very good point.
that you have a water concern.
And in the end, the other part of that is, if you're a business person wanting to develop land that's vacant on Route 3A, which is lots of right now, that will support our tax revenue townwide, not just sewer commission, I'm just townwide. So a lot of those do have water, but still, if you develop them to a higher value, there's more taxes. So on multiple levels, if you tell the public business community, we are on a water moratorium, they're not gonna look at us.
Right.
So you have to set it up where, get them thinking that, you know, we're open for business. We wanna have some really good development there, whether it's, if it helps the sewer commission directly, great, because that's what our issue is, but it helped the whole community, and that's the whole idea.
No, we're not the only ones that need revenue, the whole town needs
Yeah, I
revenue.
mean, everybody needs it.
Mhm.
So that was, I mean, Dave brought that, I haven't thought of it that way. You have a year lead time. If something is approved today, it'll be a year, maybe a year and a half. It's a good project before it actually starts taking water.
And then before people start realizing, oh, I can start thinking about developing again, that's more delay that, you know, it's gonna be a process, and if it takes 4 years to develop this well and have it functioning, that it's feeding the town, you've got another year or two of permitting process. You only have a 2-year window that you're concerned about capacity for water issues.
Yeah,
And I know Elaine's talked to Kingston Business Association, so reaching out for a lot of these kind of ideas, letting them know we're doing everything we possibly can to get this thing resolved. But, you know, they're sitting there waiting. No one's gonna do anything.
right.
No one's gonna spend $1 million or $2 million investing in a piece of land if they don't have an answer on the end. So I think we're all going in the right direction.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, and then I just put in here that public hearing we're gonna have in May after town meeting. To set the betterment special assessment amount. We'll be setting 2. We'll have one, the special assessment for the leaching fields. That'll be the lesser amount. And then we'll have another one that will have to rethink whether or not we want to pay $22,000 for a connection fee that we have now, if we want to.
Definitely not joint.
Right, so that'll be the discussion at that meeting, what that amount should be, because the special assessment will be whatever the debt is divided by whoever's paying.
And on that point, I brought this in, tell me if this is what we did in the sewer commission in 1999. That's not what we actually have now. I don't think,
No,
but it's very detailed for the first phase. There's a lot of calculations in that.
oh, this stuff is,
Is that familiar to you?
the words are, yes,
Yeah.
not this format, but yes,
Okay,
especially the sewer unit value determination.
yeah, I was gonna have Jean make a
Yeah.
copy and send to all of us, but.
I think of-
We didn't. No.
some of this is in our,
Thursday, she'll be in.
It just might give some background to how we came up with it and how we did it, focused on the first 2 contracts and remind myself how we came up with. I mean, going back to what Dave brought from Harwich.
Yeah.
and, You know, our numbers at 22. 22 looks like 48,000. And the number that Harwich is using is like 54,000.
Yeah, somewhere in
So
that
on a
50,000.
present day value point of view, we're not far off from, we were looking 20 years ahead.
yeah,
So that's more than, when I was talking about 36 or 38,000, that may be low. And real value to a property. So it's not a simple thing.
yeah.
And that was, I hope, I'll make copies of it. I'll
Okay.
scan it in and send
Yeah,
it.
that'll be good, because this calculation is here, is in our rules and regulations, and it's basically the betterment cost
Yeah,
divided by.
but I looked at ours quickly, the one we have, actually, it's not this one, I go, maybe this is what confusing me.
It's,
It's still 330, it's still EIUs, the same EIU,
Yeah.
and all that, okay.
Yeah.
I'll
and
do
that's
that.
the sewer units. The special assessment will be by EIUs, not property. So that if you're the mall, you're paying more than you are for a single family home. So, but that'll just basically be the debt divided by whoever's paying, whether a third by the town or 100% by the customers.
But the debt and, it'll be the debt, basically, and then this gets into other costs. There's other costs you can throw into that legitimately for escalation, that's one. The other one was just, unforeseen circumstances, that was like pumping, things that are not necessarily being picked up by the O and M costs. They're large ticket items that would be in that period of time. Those are two that DEP allows you to, wants you to think about.
Mhm.
And we did that with the original betterment. So just so this is on the record, we did a lot of water. We replaced water lines. Because, so we're not, if you're doing a sewer, there's one cost, okay? You put the sewer in, you hook that thing up and all that's good. But when you're doing the sewer, because the pipes are so old, they're transite, they break. So now you have an added cost. You can anticipate it, but you can't get a number on it. So you're allowed to put in the legal way the betterments are set up, you're allowed to put it in a kind of a, lack of a better word, it's a slush fund. But it's a legitimate, how do we cover the unforeseen circumstances, which is probably the legal term. But there's got to be a way to do that. Otherwise, we're now picking up another cost that is legitimately part of the betterment. The only other way to do it is to have a separate sewer connection fee that gets into that, and then not to belabor this point. Let's say we have that 106 well,
Yeah,
I mean the 106 pump station, and we're going up to go around all the South Shore wells that are getting contaminated by sewage. Now, that may or may not be something we can do out of betterments, or it becomes a special cost that the town picks up. Okay, it's because it's for the well.
right,
Okay,
to protect.
so they'll participate in it. So somehow we have to be thinking in front of everybody that, all right, the users are going to pay a betterment, but we're not going to pay the whole betterment. Maybe they're going to pay a partial of it because that particular pipe, only that one, is unique. And then the ones, if we're trying to solve the problem at Gray's Beach, they pick up the whole thing. They had the choice of doing this, and they kicked the can down the road 20 years ago. We picked up all that already. We already invested that money, so you pay the whole thing. It's just as long as it's understood that betterments could change, and we have to keep ourselves where we may have some unexpected costs we have to build into it. Once we're done.
Yeah. So we'll get that scheduled because we have to do the 2-week notice in the newspaper. So I'll work with Jeannie to just pick a date. Because then we'll have to get out letters to all the sewer customers stating they have the option of paying the special assessment in full. And if they don't sign the form, then it'll automatically be spread out over 19, 20 years. So that's where Erin's spreadsheet will come in handy too. So. Do you have anything, Kathleen?
No, I know there was some discussion about the betterment calculation. I know that as we move forward, we'll talk more about it, but I just, yes, we'll figure that out.
In what? Just so because we can't talk about it till, as a board until, public hearing.
Yeah, there was just concern about the calculation. I think that there was, some discussion about the special assessment not being for the full debt service. Because then new users wouldn't be, it would be hard to calculate how you're gonna create the new fee, because what would that be paying for?
And that's the 2 fees we'll be talking about at the May meeting. Because right now we have the debt for the special assessment. We know what that amount is. And then in future, new sewer customers would be paying anywhere from, currently it's $22,000 for a single family home, up to Howard is paying over 50,000. So would be new customers.
But
Is
what would that money be going towards? If you've covered all your debt service, what is that betterment money for?
It's the
Usually
balance,
it's
it's the
usually
balance,
for project cost.
it's the balance of what has not been accumulated to date for the upgrade
So it'd just be for the expansion.
expansion, yeah.
Well, and whatever other infrastructure needs there could be.
Yeah, there'll be some piece there, but there's way I'm looking at it is we have, okay. The numbers in my head are $38 million is what we needed for the expansion in the 2 tanks. And there's a delta unpaid. We haven't got betterment fees already put in the bank. We have some, we have the mall, we have other people that paid extra, so there's a delta. I don't know what that delta is, but I think it's 14 million. It's $14 million of the 38. It's not accounted for, and then there's a 7 or 8 million for the leaching field.
We have like 400,000 for the 4th tank, right?
Yeah, somewhere, I think we have
Yeah.
4,
In betterments now.
yeah. And then there's a shortfall.
There's a
what is it,
shortfall about
3,
375.
3.7, yeah.
375 times 20 years,
Yeah.
right?
30 for the plant expansion.
Okay, that's, yeah, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So 370,000 times 30. 3.
Because there was a thought,
11 million. I was thinking 14. So that's 11 million dollars. So we have to come up with $11 million to pay off that debt. Then this analysis I just mentioned a little bit more. And then there's still the 7 million. That's what the 14 million. Right.
well, the 7 million would be paid in full with these proposed betterments, the special assessments, whatever.
But
Right.
I think we're looking at if we are able to, once we have to get to town meeting, that's the problem. We haven't got
Yeah.
this answer yet.
Right.
But once we get through it, I mean, I think legal. The best situation was we only need this 1 year. You know, if we get the betterment open, the betterment's open and we have 5 projects in the next year that total. I'm thinking in terms of the same size of the mall. That was 6 million. But 3 million, 3.2 million, right?
3.2 was the
So-
apartments.
That paid for the sewer line, paid for the pump station, paid for the engineering design. The other way we look at it is this betterment of 36,000 or 39,000 or whatever it is, would be used to get that 11 million paid off faster. And once it's paid off, the 7 million, we could draw that down faster. So the assessments could actually be terminated, not in 20 years, but in 5. You know,
Well, then you're making people pay more.
So what's your solution? We
Yeah,
have debt to pay.
So
I've got
I've got a thought on this. So if we're looking at a special assessment from leaching field.
Right.
And to Kathleen's concern is, all right, say all these current users pay that special assessment for the leaching field. If it were more an infrastructure cost. So once those people pay for that, if there's more users coming in, if they also have an infrastructure cost, that at least can upkeep any upkeep we need to do on the pump stations. Because once this is all, things never end. You look at just our situation with the VFDs this
no, that's my
weekend,
point. You have money
No.
there, but
well,
there's about a $70,000 just boom in one day just spent on a pump and a VFD. You've got 16 pump stations. You've got 16 pump stations at the pumps, generators, electrical panels. All those are 24 years old.
Mhm.
So there's going to be a point that those need replacement. So with the electric company, they have that transmission cost. So instead of looking at it more as a leaching field betterment, it's an infrastructure assessment. So that way, if it were fully paid at the leaching field, then the new infrastructure costs that are being charged to people can go towards future infrastructure costs that you won't have to then in 15 years add another cost to people. That will fill in that void, because you got to start looking further ahead with
Right.
some of this stuff too.
well, the user fees are gonna have to go up to pay for that too. That's another reason the user fees go up. But again, we're offsetting different numbers for the same purposes.
Well, and that's it. And as we sell the capacity for the 4th tank, we're getting the infrastructure fee cost. And user fees. So as the user fees come in, like we said, we'll reevaluate our user fees.
Yeah.
It may be we give relief on that end and, continue with the infrastructure, so.
That's why you mix the two, betterments and, oh, yeah, they want to go to the bank.
Right,
Just go to the
exactly,
bank, so the $70,000, we're not going back
right.
for that.
Right.
So,
Right.
Yeah, you'd have more of a capital fund.
Yeah, yeah.
For, yeah, because that's more maintenance and upkeep rather than a new project, which is really what betterments are for. They're not necessarily for repair of existing.
no,
That's
it
more
never
like,
should be,
it should be more of a capital type of, like reserve for capital.
Yep.
And that's how things should run, like the betterments should pay for your project costs, your borrowing and then, but you need money set aside for different things like that, but.
And that's it.
Because you don't want to overcharge people
No.
on betterments.
No,
No.
we're very sensitive. Come to our public hearings. And the thing is, it's all verbiage, but betterments can only be charged once on a property. That's why we use the term connection fees, special assessments. Legally, you can only charge a property one betterment. So working with Jay years ago, we got the connection fees in line, so. I just want to make sure that we can all come to, working agreement, because, hearing, some people this or some, it's just, let's just answer the questions and get it resolved, so none of us have to revisit this
Well,
every day, every
There
month,
was-
every year.
there was a lot of concern about charging people too much in this new special assessment.
And
Because you're having the existing users
yeah,
pay for the entire leaching field project.
what's the option?
That as new users come on, they would be benefiting from the expansion of this leaching field. Because you had to replace it, but you also expanded it. You did it 1-for-1, then you'd be like, those users pay for their new leaching field, but this is bigger. You're using it for more users, you have capacity, and that's what new betterments for people who come on would be paying for. That was the thought process, that you are putting quite a burden financially on the existing users to pay for replacement of something like continuation of service.
And that decision was made because we were looking at no ability to get any betterments in the short term. So we're kind of in a quandary that we have to not play, but we have to think about, what if we don't get this moratorium over? We're looking at huge amounts of money, so
I know.
we're taking a pretty,
And
I
those
think,
are the users that would use it
Sure.
for the
But
unknown.
to change it, when
Unknown
there's like,
time.
oh, well, we can cut it off early or do whatever, you're going through a legal process saying, I need money for 20 years. Because I have 20 years of expenses.
It's just brainstorming and bouncing around.
Well, I just want to make sure that, we don't go through a lot of work to create betterments and task other departments with a lot of work. And then it turns out you're like, never mind. Just to be fair to everybody.
Well,
it's fine.
in the short term, then we have debt to pay. That's the issue.
Right, and that's not the only method to pay for it, but it is.
I
one
know,
of the
and as far as
reasons.
using, water consumption user fees, that can get into what a special
like
assessment.
A fee on the bill, then you have flexibility to adjust them accordingly. Whereas you are making a 20-year commitment to every person who is hooked up, they have to pay this amount.
Well, and this other side of that is when we put on a special assessment, a municipal lien goes on the property.
Right.
So we're guaranteed, no matter what happens with that property, that we'll get that money.
But
Whereas if it's on a user fee, if it's on a regular consumption bill, if someone doesn't pay,
it goes right on the property, it gets linked to the tax bill.
right, but
With
that
the
all
same
takes,
enforcement, tax title, same enforcement.
that all takes time.
So does tax title.
Okay,
No, I mean, like, I'm just saying, like, at the end, you have like a 6 months, a year difference behind. You still have legal enforcement. You would not be where you were unable to collect the funds.
who's concerned with charging the sewer
I
customers?
am.
Okay, so this is,
No, I'm not the only one by any means.
Because
I want to make sure that this passes muster and it passes DOR, that they are okay with it. Because usually the IGR states that you need to have reasonable proportional assessments of a project cost.
Right, and the current people who are on the sewer were paying for that cost. Unless town meeting is generous enough to say that they should be environmental stewards and pay a third of it. I mean, we are charging the pool of people who are currently
Right.
using the services.
It just, I guess my thought was at some point in the future, you're gonna have new users.
Correct. And we'll-
And so they are paying for just a very small portion of the project, whereas existing users are paying for a much larger part.
well, if our infrastructure fee is upwards of over 20-30,000, proportionately, they're paying more than the debt that the current sewer customers would be
But you-
paying for the leaching fees.
It's just a slippery slope to use betterments for like us funds in case things go bad. It's supposed to be for projects. Supposed to be other funding sources. I mean, we can go over it another time.
No, I think there's differences of opinion.
Sure.
Certainly what we're doing is legal, or we wouldn't have been able to do it for the years that we have with the different projects that we've done. And I just want to make sure that, it's not miscommunicated that we're doing something inappropriately
No,
or
no,
wrong.
I just want to make sure
There's a-
the town council was pretty clear that it had to be a reasonable assessment.
Yeah.
If he thinks 100% is reasonable, I will go with that.
Well, if somebody's gonna raise it, now's the time to raise it, because I haven't
I've
heard
raised
that.
it repeatedly.
Yes, but I haven't heard anything. We did in the email, Keith said that the amounts we put out there were reasonable. Well, I don't know what more,
I think 100% of the debt service.
if legal counsel says.
If he
100%,
says it's great, more power to
okay,
him.
then let's get that answered, so
Let's
we
do
can
that.
put this to rest. Because this has been, a conversation for way too long.
Right, and I do want to stress that you understand, just because semantics, and we are gonna revisit the motion as well, but to make sure that you know that these betterments won't fund FY 26 budget as it is now.
And help me understand that.
Because the motion that you were looking at earlier doesn't include that new money.
I know, so what does all that mean? We're gonna have a shortfall?
No, you're gonna just use user fees, the revenue has to come.
No,
It has to,
but don't, explain to me, so you're saying we won't have money? That if we start these special assessments July 1st, that money can't be used to pay debt,
No,
because it's
You
not in the
can't fund-
motion.
right. That's how you fund a budget. Vote at town meeting, how much you want to use and from what sources.
So I'll put out a general motion, email to Jay and ask him, because it's.
But the
gonna be
money
funded-
doesn't exist right now. That's
know.
why I actually thought you were voting on how much the betterments tonight.
We can't, we have to have a public hearing for that we can't have till after town meeting to see if they're gonna be paying the third.
Okay, I just want,
That's
I just
the-
want to be clear, and we can talk very, very specifically, and I don't want to email with Jay. I want to talk to him on the phone. and
Well-
So this is public, because back and forth, and this one replies when
Well-
this one's typing, and
Well, this is the first that I've heard.
I
that-
have repeatedly mentioned
Okay.
this repeatedly.
Well, let's get,
So on our article for 2026, the way it's written now,
Mhm.
we have, with the additional monies we asked to pull from,
Yep, you have that article, that
that
370.
that covers our expenses for 2026.
Yeah, but your revenue number is very, very high. Because you're,
Because we're
picking up the
borrowing
extra,
from,
you gotta
Borrowing from
pay for
our-
the leaching field debt service with it
Right.
too.
but we've got that wrapped up.
Because you still have that other, you have the expansion debt that doesn't have full coverage of betterments, and then you have a leaching field that has no coverage for
Right.
betterments. So between those two, you have the 370 article, and then you have increased revenue.
Yes. And that increased revenue plus our septic revenue, plus the article we're pulling from balances out our FY 26 numbers.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Without this betterment
Yeah,
coming into play,
Yeah.
even though ideally that's what we want, is the new assessment to pay for the
yeah.
Legion.
And I think like if it's voted and there's an adjustment that needs to be made about funding sources, it's probably something that could be revoted at fall town meeting to make an adjustment to the budget.
But I did ask that question in one of the emails because I was surprised to hear. So, Dave, we're covering all our debt for 26. That's covered without the special assessment?
With increased revenue
Yes.
and the special article.
Increased revenue from,
The user
User
fee,
fees.
the user fees are paying for
The
the operating budget.
Well, the user fees are also gonna pay for some of your debt service.
That's
So-
not.
Or septage, I mean, revenue as a whole, but any like septage and user fees are your funding source,
Yes, and
right?
user fees.
And then betterments go towards your debt service, but your betterments are not enough to cover all of your debt service.
User fees are paying for the operating budget. Septage revenue is paying for the fourth tank.
Mhm.
The expectation was special, and correct me if I'm wrong, the special assessments would be paying for the leaching field debt. With the first payment in July and the second payment in January.
But if that doesn't go through, we have that article, you have in front of you, one for FY 26.
I mean, if you read how the motion is written now, it's using how everything was structured for 26 without the new special assessments.
Yes,
So I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, and that's what I
FY
said, can you help me
26.
understand as a reminder, the new.
So when I say
revenue
water
structure.
department revenue, that's user fees and then septage as well. So those combined, I can't parse out like this dollar goes for this and. this
Well,
dollar,
that's
you know?
how we have to make sure we have
Right,
it all
right.
coming in.
Well,
in the
that's why
right
I wanted to
buckets.
make sure, that's why I sent that request to prove out the revenue number, revenue, big bucket. Will be okay, because septage isn't billed, it's,
Collected.
no, but I mean, like, you can't forecast it because it's not a billed thing like user fees are. Totally
so
different.
on. Where is it showing that we're trying to pull from the,
You have that's the latest one that I have.
I thought we were gonna take
oh, it's in that,
on the short term betterment money that's already in the bank for this year.
oh, this part here.
The, for 25 or 26. 25 are okay.
26.
Yes.
26,
Transfer 370 from.
Yep, from that,
from the
May
article.
23, Article 7, the
Yep.
370. 2 million from wastewater enterprise revenue, so
Mhm.
that's user fees, septage, other money that may come in. And then 1.163 million into this through a betterment fund. Which is this year's allocation, not taking into account the new special assessment. That's what was previously mapped out.
And again, this does not now take anything from betterment that's already
correct.
in the bank.
It's not taking anything from the 1.6.
No, because that's.
I know, I
for
just told them we're
future.
not
Yeah.
taking
yeah,
anything
yeah.
from that.
No, it's. I mean, that's okay. So does that make sense? So I thought like if there was. If there was concern that this revenue number was not obtainable,
Mhm.
that you maybe give consideration. We are very pressed for time because we're at the end.
Mhm.
If you didn't, if we can't prove out to this number,
Mhm.
that we look
Between
at
user
another
fees and
article.
septage.
And then it would all, because if you have money where if you don't need it all,
That would be
Then
user
it would go
fees and
back to-
septage.
Which amount, 370?
2,056,699. Which is considerable given where
Between,
we're at now.
between revenue and septage, I'm estimating 2.322.
Okay.
But that additional surplus will be rolling into that septic surplus, will be rolling into the fourth tank. And then the 370 should be covering. I'm gonna look at the numbers exactly, but the leaching field loan,
Okay,
but that's more like 420, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's 404 with the new schedule. Okay.
So kind of what I sent the other day, if, if you guys can map it out.
Mhm.
So long as I can, I can have this pass muster with the state, that's fine with me. If you can reach that number, then great.
So this
I mean,
one,
like, I want that to happen, and, that's good, that means that, things
That's
are
what
going well.
that's what we're trying to get to.
Right, I just want, we just have to make sure that we just have the documentation to back it up. That's all. If we do.
And that's why we
That's good.
compartmentalize everything. So we say,
yeah, the verbiage was easier for me to follow,
Right,
yeah,
the old school way.
right,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of looked at it like, and I did, allocate like, this is that, and this is what you can do. Try to figure out what goes where. But at the end, when you do the motion, you kind of need all this money adds up to the total that I need for this budget. But you also have to remember, you have the 365,000 in indirect costs that revenue has to cover as well. This is just your budget. This is your actual, that plus this, it has to be covered by all funds. From this water and this one. I think that's what's happened in years past. People have forgotten about that. Well, it gets transferred out and then it's just this big hit that your budget takes. And so then,
well, we had 1 year that all of a sudden everything fell off the cliff, and that's what we've been trying to recoup since then, trying to figure out why. We've always been able to cover everything, including the town allocated costs, so yeah, something's happened. But
when I looked, there
anyway,
was a 1 year where when I look back, I can't remember what it was. I looked it up months ago. But there was more expense than revenue for the year.
oh yeah, that's why we had the shortfall we did.
Right, and so that just put you really far behind.
We understand that, that's what we're trying to correct it now. So we'll look at the numbers, Dave. And, if the numbers are off, then we can always amend them on the floor. No, I don't know that.
Well, ideally, we have it.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah.
have a change, you gotta make a change.
Well, I mean, that's why we're talking about it now, so we can have
Right.
it resolved and then this is written properly and there's no math errors or issues or questions.
And,
We can,
We
have it be clear.
yeah, well, we understand.
Just
Clear
'cause
as
it-
mud.
I mean, this is not the only article motion that I'm not worried about, but like have to keep track of.
So-
I'm just saying, there's a
Okay, I was
lot of
gonna say,
moving parts
because-
to tell me to.
Worried about as far as making sure we have the revenue to cover the debt.
And just to make sure, like, if things get changed, I don't wanna be like, hold on. For any, for any article, it has
No,
nothing,
no,
not even this. you know what I mean?
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
It's always just like, we work so hard to try to get every dollar tracked that you don't want anybody to.
Yep.
Mess with the
We're all,
process.
we're all on the same page. We all want it to work.
Yeah.
And have town meeting be as clean as possible.
Yep.
It's no
easy
good if
peasy.
there's confusion.
Nope.
So-
That way I can go home and sleep at night.
Let's get this moratorium on, and we can start.
Yeah.
To become a distant memory quickly.
I hope so.
Okay,
Great.
so anything else?
No, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.